Jim Cramer joins me on the floor of the NYSE. I'm Catherine Ross of TheStreet. All right, Jim, this Gap splitting up is a huge story.
I did a good piece, I think a good piece for real money. I spent a lot of time on it, a little more than I should because I try to get my organized morning. And what I'm doing is presenting it as a narrative about growth versus value. When Mickey Drexler came in 1983, the stock was at pennies, and he took it to 50 by reinventing the company endlessly. The last 4 years because of Old Navy. So here we now have Old Navy being broken out. And the rest of Gap, which includes Athleta, which is very fast growing, but also Banana Republic, which really hasn't been that good, is going to be, you have two companies that are roughly like $8-9 billion in revs. You've got Old Navy growing at 3% that people think could accelerate if there was laser focus. And then you have all these other businesses that aren't growing at all. And you put them together and you close the bad ones and you give that to Art Peck, who's got great big data. And I think he can accelerate it simply by closing bad ones. He's going to have the cover of that. I think he calls it Newco, so he doesn't have to call it Gap. They can come up with a new name for it. I hope he doesn't just come up with like Mondelez, But I think it's something that a lot of the analysts are skeptical about, and I am less skeptical about. I think you wait till Monday if you want to buy it, because I think you get some downgrades, because there are a lot of people who have been just saying, listen, if I could ever get rid of this dog, I would. It's not going to be a dog. It's not going to be a dog because not because of the growth, even though I like the idea that it could grow. They bought back half the float and the stock was up 5 points over the last decade. I contrast that for when it was growing. But it's because of the underperforming stores. They haven't been able to close stores fast enough. Catherine, you start closing bad stores, you're going to see a pretty decent number. Have you been to a Gap lately?
So I like Gap's jeans, so yes. But I was talking about this with a couple of people at TheStreet last night, and I was just saying that one thing that I'm curious about is whether or not Old Navy can stand on its own. And one thing that I do have to note is that I personally go into Old Navy and I am always walking out with at least one item.
Look, if we want to buy stuff for the beach, okay, we just go to Old Navy.
Exactly.
Now, it's not going to be a B corporation, so to speak, sustainability. I think they have to work on that because one of the things that Peck immediately talks about is sustainability is release. That's important because Gap's known as a landfill. That goes right to landfill, but I agree with you. Now, Gap is going denim, obviously that's the roots, but we also have the VF Corp denim, and we also have Levi's coming public. There's too much denim. There's too many companies that do denim.
Too many options.
Yes, so I am concerned that, look, it's going to take till 2020 for them to do it. I'm concerned there'll be people get impatient, not unlike how I'm impatient with Dow DuPont, which has been so bad for us after being so good, and I didn't take it off the table. That's for action alerts. But I'm excited about the spin. I'm excited about the split, but don't pay up 5. That's not our style. It will come in because there are analysts who are very negative about it.
And what about eBay and Starboard? They're making headlines.
Well, that's something very funny. I was gratified. Both sides said what they did was took Ben Sato, took our Mad Money piece and basically did our plan. And I don't have the hubris of going with what they're saying, but it's very nice and it's a good split if they do it. They may not do it, but there's Jesse Cohn's joining the board. And he's marvelous. He's had a great record. He's the guy who did it for Paul Singer. Anyone who went to our corporate governance conference last year, we had a very exciting interview with Singer Elliott Management. And there are these people that are within that organization that are just incredible, and Cohn's one of them. I'm hoping Devin Winnick, whom I really like, will go along with the split and give us StubHub. And give us the classifieds. But because the reason I say that is because look at how much money we made with PayPal for action alerts. So you need a split would be very, very good. And there's a lot of good things happening. You get an eBay, you get a Masco doing its thing. You get stocks like American Express starting to move because people say, well, they're the one that's first in the queue if China changes in terms of FinServe. In FinTech, they wanted their own license in China. If the Chinese wanted to show that they mean business, they'll give American Express their license without having a joint venture. You have so many balls in the air. Be careful on the UNHs of the world, that's an action alerts, because that group's going to come down again because people just keep selling that group, taking the money and going elsewhere. I know that this is one of those moments where, as we're in March, you should get some profit taking from the 1st February. We can speak to Dr. Seuss about that in a moment.
I'm glad that you mentioned Dr. Seuss because his birthday is tomorrow. And so in honor of his birthday, I want to ask you, where the markets will go.
Okay, one fish, two fish, thing one and thing two. Theodore Geisel, by the way, who is Dr. Seuss, is a brilliant man. went to Dartmouth, I believe. If you read the book Five Came Back, that's what it's called. Five Came Back. It's a Netflix series. He was one of the people, along with, there were some seriously incredibly great directors who were involved with General Marshall to talk about why we fight. And actually a series, Frank Capra, Why We Fight. But they went and they documented the war. And Theodore Geisel was a hero in World War II. He helped document the war for General Marshall. He's a great man. And Sam, I, like many people, read Dr. Seuss when we were growing up, and then read Dr. Seuss to my kids. Very lasting, and Dr. Seuss is very upbeat in the end. There's probably a political message in some of this. He's a very political guy, too, by the way. But my conclusion is that we could have, I think this one, if it's a Theodore Geisel, there could be a Grinch element.
Why?
A Grinch element. Because what did Grinch do? First he took them, and then he gave them back. So maybe we have to take some points off the table, and then we get them back.
So today, we've got an update so far. Do you think that we need to give back some of that?
No, I think it's more Grinch. I think Grinch may take some points away next week. All right?
I like
remember,
that takeaway.
Grinch gives them back, but he could take some points away next week because, we see things today like the non-fangs, the Cloud Kings. Workday had a really great quarter, and Workday's down, which is really extraordinary. What's happening is that there's profit taking. This is the beginning. It feels like this is the beginning of profit taking and rotation into stocks where there has been no profit. But that will feel like that the Grinch stole the Cloud Kings.
The Grinch stole the Cloud Kings. What a headline.
Cloud Kings.
All right, so Jim, we've talked off camera a lot about investing education, which is something that you and I both feel very strongly about. And so, in honor of all these PG&E headlines, I'm wondering, do you have any tips for investors who are worried about PG&E's balance sheet right now?
Well, I often say that if you want to speculate on a low dollar stock, and I talk about this a lot in Confessions of a Street Addict and also in Stay Mad for Life, you may be looking at a low dollar stock. I may be looking at a balance sheet. And the balance sheet is what often controls a low dollar stock. For a lot of people want me to recommend Sprint, but because it's a $6 stock. And they're merging with T-Mobile. I recommend T-Mobile. Balance sheet's good. Sprint's balance sheet is terrible. Well, if you want really bad balance sheet, PG&E. So I want to be very careful ever recommending a low dollar stock just because it seems cheap. And if you check in Confessions of a Street Addict, you'll see what I did wrong in Memorex Telex, which was to buy cheap stock without paying enough attention to the balance sheet. So that's where you got to look. Low dollar stock, check balance sheet. Now, low dollar stock, like when I just mentioned, I talked about Gap stores and how it was 50 cents when Mickey Drexler came in. Well, of course, it was obviously split adjusted. So there are low dollar stocks that don't have bad balance sheets, but there are most low dollar stocks. Nobody wants a $2 stock. You don't want it. You don't want a $5 stock. Institutions don't even want to buy below $5. So always remember that. When you see a low dollar stock, it's usually not what executives want at the company, and it's often because of the balance sheet.
Now, before I let you go, if the Grinch charges into the market next week and takes some points away, are there any stocks or any sectors that you would recommend?
Well, I have, retail's been very hit or miss, but there's some real values there. But I think that when you look at what's rallied, it's distinctly non-FANG. We might get a rotation into FANG, not FANG, because I think that Apple acts so terribly, and I don't know how Apple does a good quarter. But I think the rest of them, I mean, if you look at Facebook, it's so far behind the market. A lot of this is political because, people feel they still haven't cleaned their act up. And yesterday, Google, what was the story there? It was about a child, child YouTube and scatological next to child. And, how could they not have solved these problems already is what people say. So I think those stocks have been stalled as the Cloud Kings move. I see a rotation. happening. I also see my jacket. Thank you, Brent.
All right, Jim,
hey,
we got
to... Remember what I try to do with these videos. We call it, Regina Gilgan is my executive producer for Mad Money. Things are produced or unproduced, not produced. Everything I do on TV is produced, okay? And I like that. I like produced. I am a old school guy. Younger people, I think, like what we're doing because it's not produced.
I would hope so.
Stuff. That's why I want to ask you about this Be Certified.
Yes.
Be Certified. Tell people what that is.
What Be Certified is?
With retail. How people like sustainability with retail. right?
Yes, they do. And I think that one thing to really pay attention to right now is e-commerce and retail, because that's what's really going to change the game going forward. We've got, I honestly just ordered booties off of Amazon.
Well, I think that when I look at what Capri's doing with sustainability, when I look at what Athleta done with sustainability, younger people order things online, but they want to know that they were made with a purpose.
Exactly.
And if you don't make things with a purpose, there's a rebellion, okay? So when you sit down with Idol from Capri, he talks about purpose, all right? When you buy online, the same people who buy online are the people who are aligned with this B certified. And I think it's going to be more and more important. Now, someone was critical of me online saying, how could you not know more about this in Twitter? Well, no. I mean, I just wanted to inject my daughter into the conversation because she's the one who taught me. She's at Parsons getting an associate's degree. And, she's just, this is all they talk about is sustainability online.
It's sustainability, and I think that one thing to really mention is with Gap. You can bring that back up because I think that when I talk to people that are around my age, one thing that we all do is we do the research. We go into the stores. We go into TJ Maxx, Target, Gap, all of these, and try on these different jeans, and then decide, am I going to pay $150 for a really nice pair of jeans, or am I going to settle for Gap's jeans?
Right.
And that kind of thing. So it's all about the research, and it's about the sustainability, because I want them to last.
You're totally right. I think the research by younger people is extraordinary versus my generation, where we would do much more snap-by. And it's great, and I think it's important, something I want to talk more about. Remember, I've decided in 2019 to devote myself to what my kids have taught me. And a lot of this has to do with something that I learned from Fabrizio Fraida, who is the CEO of Estee Lauder, one of the best performing stocks of the era, where he said that he likes to do reverse mentoring, where he brings in his executives and he has them work for the younger people in their 20s at the company periodically. And at least once a month. And so it's reverse mentor, and I try to have my kids reverse mentor me.
It's a good idea. You get to learn from that.
It's really important, and I make a point of it. It's often embarrassing because I don't know these things, and they're somewhat shocked that I don't. But that's how you learn, and I think I would not be doing this if it weren't for Fabrizio Fraida, who is a genius. Worked at Procter for a long time, now runs Estee Lauder.
And Estee Lauder is one of those brands where I walk into a drugstore and I'm trying to pick up mascara, and I immediately go to them.
Yeah, well,
they just have that brand recognition.
MAC too, by the way. What MAC does, well, they have a lot of different brands, but they do a huge amount of duty free. So when you go to a really beautiful Milan airport, Malpensa, what you'll find is right there you'll find all the different Estee Lauder brands. And what I love about them, when I look at them, not only are they all high-end, but a lot of them are boutiques, because he does a lot of experimenting, trying to find what works. And because he's got great data from the duty-free, he then knows where to put more money. He's very smart.
All right, so we got to go on to Action Alerts Plus, because I want to talk to you about Salesforce, which I'm very curious about.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
Kohl's, speaking of retail.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Jim, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.